Hi, my name is Lane McConnell, and I'm going to be your instructor this semester for Math 1350, which is the Introduction to Statistics. Um, Before we get started with actual course material and content, I want to go over just some of the basics about how this course is going to be run, how it'll be formatted, how you can get in touch with me, some of those basic pieces of information. So basically, I'm just going to run through the syllabus here with you and ensure that you actually see what the important parts are, because I know it's very easy to just kind of glaze over the syllabus. So the first thing you'll see in the syllabus, and the syllabus is available here in Brightspace. Hopefully that's where you're watching this video anyways, so you can see it in the overview and syllabus area. But it's got my name here. The best way to get in touch with me, if you want to get in touch with me, is via my email. And my email is in the syllabus. You can also access my email address by messaging me directly through Brightspace. But my email is lmcconnell6@cnm.edu. And I do want to emphasize that 6. You've got to remember the 6. There's actually another L. McConnell, and it turns out it's my cousin, and he's received some emails that he thought were intended for me in the past. He's a student at CNM. I'm going to be holding Zoom office hours for this class on Mondays from 10 to 11 a.m. The link for that is going to be, again, throughout Brightspace. You can hopefully track it down without too much trouble. It's under the course information section, and then I think there's also a link to it, hopefully at the top, under the communication section in Brightspace. That hopefully that link will be working. Either way, if you have trouble finding it, just shoot me an email and I can send you that link directly. As far as the class goes, we're covering a lot of material this semester. There's a description of the different topics that we're going to be covering in the syllabus, and you'll see all these student learning outcomes. Those are all the different topics that we're supposed to cover by the end of the semester. So right now, if you read through that list, there's going to be a whole bunch of jargon that's specific to statistics, words you may never have heard before. And so I don't want you to spend too much time reading through that. If you want to, you can kind of see what we're going to cover, but for the most part, don't worry about that. I just want to get to the parts that you actually really care about. So the first thing you'll probably care about is the textbook. How do you access the textbook? What is the textbook? How do you pay for it? And the answer is we've got an ebook version of a book called Elementary Statistics. The authors are Navidi and Monk, and you've already paid for it. It was included in your tuition for this class. So the math classes here at CNM have switched to an inclusive access model, which means basically you pay for the textbook upfront, and that means you wind up getting it for a lot cheaper than you would otherwise. So to access the ebook, you'll want to log into Connect Math. There are going to be instructions that you can follow to sign up for Connect Math. And the ebook is there. And again, if you have trouble finding it or locating it down the line, just send me an email and I'll help you figure that all out. There is an optional loose leaf version of the book if you really like to have a hard copy when you're reading, and you can order that through the bookstore or maybe even directly through the publisher. And I think it might be an extra $20 or $30 if you want sort of a bound, essentially just loose leaf paper with the book printed on it. My hope is that you won't really need the book very much. You'll probably want to have access to it a little bit, but for the most part, my lectures should cover, 90% of the material that we're going to need for homeworks and 100% of the material that you'll wind up needing for exams. So hopefully most people have told me they don't wind up needing to use the textbook very often. But if you're one of those people that really learns by reading, again, use that ebook all you want. We're going to be taking exams this semester using basically good old-fashioned pencil and paper. And the setup is going to be such that you will take the exam online and write down your answers and then scan and submit those. And while you're taking the exam, unfortunately, you'll have to be using something called the Respondus lockdown browser. I'm not sure if you've ever used it before. Some of you may have. If you've taken a math class recently, you probably did. But if not, it's basically a browser that you'll download that just locks you into one specific site, the site where the exam is, and doesn't let you navigate to any other websites. It's not great. I don't particularly like it. but it's required for math classes. Every math class, we have to proctor our exams using this software, or at least for our online classes, to make sure that our classes transfer to other institutions. It's a little invasive, and I promise you right off the bat, I'm not going to be monitoring you taking the exams, but you will need a webcam or a laptop that has a built-in webcam or something of that nature, an iPad. All of those should be fine, a Chromebook. Um, and you'll basically record yourself taking the exam. And again, it's a piece of software. I know a lot of people feel that that feels very big brothery, and I agree totally. I wouldn't be using it if I didn't have to, but I promise you, short of extremely rare circumstances where somebody is accused of cheating and they tell me I need to go review your video or something, I'm not going to be watching these videos. So please don't freak out about them too much. Again, it's out of my hands. I don't have a choice. There will be more instructions for how to download and install that lockdown browser closer to our first exam. And in fact, we'll actually do a practice run, I think, in the second week of class, where you can just get a feel for, again, making sure we can work out any kinks in downloading, installing the browser, and making sure that it runs smoothly. There are webcams specified by the bookstore, but it really doesn't matter. Any webcam is totally fine. So just keep that in mind. And again, there's some more information about that here in the syllabus. One other item that is not going to be required, even though I say it's required here in the syllabus, is a graphing calculator. And it doesn't have to be specifically this TI-84 model. I would strongly recommend that you purchase one of these graphing calculators, but it can be an older model like a TI-83 or a TI-83 Plus. The TI-84s are great. And if you have a different brand, a Casio makes some graphing calculators, or Hewlett-Packard HP. If you have one of those, if you have access to one of those, it'll really come in handy this semester. So I don't want to force anybody to buy them. I've had students successfully get through this course without them, and there's nothing on the exams that will 100% require them. That said, it does tend to make problems a lot easier, and so it's not going to be a requirement, but it is a very strong recommendation. If you can, avoid buying one, borrow one from somebody you know, a brother, sister, cousin, whatever, friend, or look to try to buy one used, because if you're buying one new, they are quite expensive. I believe they're in like the $100 to $120 range. So not exactly an empty expense there. It's quite a bit of money for a class, or for an item that you'll probably use for this class and then never use again. So check things like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, eBay. We're not going to need it right away, so try to order one soon. We will start using it probably by about the third week of class, so try to have it before then. In the meantime, there are apps that emulate or behave exactly like the graphing calculator. I've put two links, one for Android. You can actually also use it on just like a computer on a PC. I'll be using an emulator that graphing calculator emulator in a lot of my videos to show you the steps to go through. And then there's another one that works pretty well for iPhone. I think the Android one is completely free, and the iPhone one, I want to say, costs maybe $6 or something like that, $6 or $7, something in that range. Those are going to be great for homework, but unfortunately, I can't let you use them during exams. On exams, you either need the real calculator, or you'll be able to forego it and just use things like Excel, like a spreadsheet or something of that nature as well. And again, those will work fine. The calculator won't be required on exams. There will be workarounds, other ways of doing things. But I strongly recommend the calculator. If you have any doubts about this class, 100% get the calculator. It will make your life easier. And if you have questions or want to discuss it with me, shoot me an email. Once again, I'm more than happy to discuss that with you. Attendance. This is an online class, but I need you logging in on a pretty regular basis, or at least checking your emails. We're going to have due dates that happen weekly, so you really only technically need to log in once a week to get all that stuff done. But I'd strongly recommend, again, trying to log in more frequently than that. I do post announcements and or send out emails. Just trying to keep in touch when things come up. If there's anything you need to be kept informed about. Again, in class, there isn't really in-class rules because it's online, but there are some netiquette rules. Basically, just don't be jerks to other people if on the few times that we wind up using a discussion board, things of that nature. There are some important deadlines here in the syllabus. The last day you can drop without taking a W and, in fact, get your money back is like 2 weeks after the class starts, September 13th. And then the last date to drop the class altogether with a W or change your grading option is in November 5th. And I'll try to send you an email or post an announcement closer to that time just to remind people. At that point, we will have had exams and we'll be kind of zeroing in on, you'll have a lot of homework done. You should have a pretty good sense of where you stand in the class at that point. As far as how the grades are going to be calculated, standard letter grading policy, in the 90s up to 100, that's an A, 80s are Bs, 70s are Cs, and so on. But the breakdown for how your final grade is going to be calculated it's in the syllabus. A big chunk of your grade is going to be homework, and it's an online homework system, again, called Connect Math. If you're unfamiliar with it, you'll certainly get accustomed to using it very quickly. But if you've ever used any of the other homework systems, Alex or My Math Lab or My Lab Math, or there's one called WebAssign, if you've ever used any of those, this is very similar. It tends to be pretty straightforward, and it has some good tutorials for how to get started. But again, if you have any questions down the line, send me an email. There will be a link in Brightspace. You can click on that link. It says literally Connect Math right on the side. When you click that link, it should prompt you to sign up if you've never signed up before. And once you're there, it'll take you directly to our class, and it'll have folders for each week of homework that we've got. So there will be a week 1 folder with everything you need for week 1, a week 2 folder with all the homework for week 2, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be a big chunk of your homework, or of your grade, 30% of your grade. You need to do the homework. To make things a little bit less stressful for you, I want to highlight this last sentence here, kind of at the bottom. I'm not going to require you to get 100% on your homework in order to receive 100% credit. So the cutoff I'm going to use is an 80%. If you can average on all those Connect Math homeworks across the board, if you can have your overall average work out to an 80%. So you don't need an 80 on every single one. You could get hundreds on some, and you could literally skip and get zeros on others. As long as your overall average on the Connect Math homework is an 80%, I will give you full credit at the end of the semester. So keep that in mind. You might want to try to get, knock out most of the homework early on. That's really easy. And then maybe down the line, if there's some trickier homeworks or a week that gets stressful and you just don't have time to finish the homework, try to get some hundreds to give you a little wiggle room down the line. Participation, not going to be a huge part of the grade. It's only 5%, but these things are just literally like a couple of discussion posts that we're going to have throughout the class, not a lot, and just staying, logging in and doing the practice tests that I assign, all of that stuff. So if you just kind of are involved in the course, you should have no problem getting that 5%. Another big chunk of your grade will come from the exams that we're going to have. We're going to have 2 sort of midterm exams. They're going to be 15% of your grade each. So combined, those 2 exams will add up to 30%. And so that's kind of a nice thing. If you're worried, if you're an anxious test taker, if you have anxiety surrounding tests, the 2 midterms we're going to have, they only weigh the same amount as your homework. So do well on the homework, and it gives you a lot of wiggle room on the exams. So you'll have those 2 midterms plus a final exam. That final exam is worth a lot. It's worth 25% of your grade. That's what we're required to make it weigh. I think that's the smallest amount we're allowed to make the final exam weigh in these math courses. And then the last bit of your grade will come from a project near the end of the semester. I'm calling it a final project, but really it's just a project. It doesn't take the place of the final exam. They're separate. There's going to be a project at the end of the semester and then a final exam at the end of the semester. The project will be relatively, again, short, straightforward. you'll be doing a lot of the stuff that we learned this semester, kind of wrapping it up using a real data set that I've taken from, in this case, probably the city of Albuquerque is what we're going to use as some employment data. And again, that final project is not going to be huge. You'll see it at the time. Most students can typically wrap that project up in a few hours, 2 or 3 hours. So don't worry too much about that. But that's how your grade's going to be calculated. These are the weights. It all adds up to our 100%. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. These are all of the other sort of standard messages that C&M likes us to put in our syllabi. I'm trying to think if there's any important ones. Oh, this one comes up quite frequently. If you have any accessibility requirements, extended testing time, anything of that nature due to any documented disability or issue you have through the Disability Resource Center, try to let me know early just so we can kind of square things up and get a plan in place for the whole semester. So again, if you are one of the people in that situation, you probably know the drill at this point. So just try to get in touch with me in the first week or two and we can come up with a plan. The last thing I want to point out is I do have a tentative schedule here. You'll notice that it covers week by week exactly what sections we'll be covering. Every single week, the way it's set up is I will have YouTube lecture videos. So basically, I've created lecture videos that I've posted on YouTube covering each one of these sections. And occasionally, I'll post a little extra video covering how to use technology, either things like Excel or your graphing calculator, to get through some of the problems. So make sure you try. I would recommend watching all the videos for a week before you try to start the homework for that week. So for example, if you look in week 1, there's a section 1.1 video on sampling and section 1.2 on types of data. I would recommend watching both of those videos before starting either of the homeworks. Sometimes I will have some hints in the second video that will help you complete the homework for the first video. So just keep that in mind as you go through everything. So it goes through week by week. You'll notice that our first exam is going to be in week 6. Our second exam is in week 11. And I do have one week that's more or less kind of left open, just for reviewing, for making things up, working on your project. So hopefully the way that I've got it set up will have a little bit of flexibility in case something comes up along the line and we need to bump stuff back. We have a little flexibility to do that. And then again, the final exam will just be during the last week of class. So that's everything in here. I do want to mention just a couple of other things to keep in mind. I talked about the homework and that it will be due weekly. The date that it will be due is going to be the day rather, is going to be Tuesday of each week. So for example, this first week, hopefully you'll watch all the videos this week, but the homework for week 1 won't be due until Tuesday of the following week. So you'll have a full 8 days to work on everything. And that's how it'll be set up. Each week will open up on that Monday. So basically, the stroke of midnight between Sunday night and Monday morning, you'll have access to that week's everything you need for that week. And all of the assignments for that week will be due by the Tuesday of the following week. So you'll have 8 days to get through it all. As for exams, during exam weeks, we will always have a review beforehand. That review will take the form of like a Zoom meeting. And I'll record that meeting for people that can't attend, but I'll give you a practice test. We'll go through the practice test, and the practice test will wind up looking very similar to the real test. So keep that in mind. And then during those exam weeks, I will also give you basically a 48-hour window to do the exam in. Typically, I'm planning on being Fridays and Saturdays. So you'll have 48 hours to complete the exam, or at least a 48-hour window in which to take the exam, starting again, stroke of midnight between Thursday night and Friday morning, and then you'll have to turn it in before midnight on Saturday night. And hopefully that will allow people with different work schedules to kind of fit the exams in at their convenience. Typically the exams I'll probably give you a 2-hour window to complete the exams. So just keep that in mind. Once you start it, you'll have 2 hours to complete it, but you can work on it anywhere within that 48-hour window. I think most of the other details will kind of come up along the way as we go. If there's any questions that you have, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will be on those office hours. I love it when people show up and I'm not just sitting on an empty Zoom meeting for an hour. So please utilize my office hours. If those office hours are inconvenient for you, send me an email and we can set up a different Zoom appointment, a one-on-one Zoom appointment outside of those office hours. So I want to be as flexible and accommodating as possible. Just make sure you utilize the help that's there, before you start to struggle too much. One last thing I should mention, now that I'm thinking of it, is on the topic of struggling. Again, reach out to me for help right away. But if my timeline doesn't work for you, my office hours don't work, or if you feel like I'm not being responsive enough via email, or if we're having a back and forth via email and it's not just not working to answer your questions, another great resource that CNM has is the ACE Tutoring Center. So please utilize them. There's some great tutors over there. In particular for statistics, I'd strongly recommend a few different names. There's a tutor named Tucker who's really good for statistics. One named Michael Sanchez, I believe is his last name, and then Yvette. Those three in particular, I've worked with them, and I know that they're all great stats tutors. So utilize them, utilize me, and again, above all else, if you start to feel lost or struggling, get in touch with me before it gets any worse, and we'll figure out a plan to try to make things better. So that's all I've got for now. Go ahead and get started on all your week 1 stuff, and good luck this semester.